Rob Ruckus.
Hey, this is Kate Clover.
Hey guys, it's Nick Collins here from The Effect and Better Strangers.
Hi, my name is Madeline Rose.
Hey, it's Ben McKelvey.
It's Tim Howard here from Mike and the Mechanics.
Hello, I'm Amanda Lehman.
I'm Billy Harvey.
What's going on, everybody? I'm Casey Sampson from the band Twist Stop.
Hey, it's Tony from Fastball.
Hello, everybody. My name is Isaiah Mitchell.
Hey guys, it's Matt here from the White Lakes.
You're listening to Almost Famous Magazine.
Come join us for this interview. Check it out, Almost Famous Magazine.
Hey everybody, welcome back to The Hang on Almost Famous Magazine. Now I've got someone today you haven't necessarily heard of yet, if you're not in the LA area probably, but you should know who he is. You should be going out and seeing him when he performs. And he's got some really good music out there on all the great platforms right now. So I'm so excited to introduce you to Rudy Nuno. He has a new single coming out, and we'll get into that in a little while. But we were going to get into his musical roots, his influences more. So welcome, Rudy. Thanks for hanging with us.
Thank you so much, Scott. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to be chatting with you online. So thanks again for having me.
Absolutely. This is going to be a lot of fun. The typical way that I start these out, and I think this is great because a lot of times I'll go out and I'll do research. And sometimes, when you find out too many things, you get a little too down in the rabbit hole on stuff. You've got a website. I found your Instagram. I found your YouTube, right? But I couldn't find a lot more than that. So I think this is going to give us an opportunity to really let you open up and give our audience who's watching a chance to get to know you. So one of my kind of standard, big ways that I start one of these is like your musical journey. I want to hear the story and start with, at whatever point, did music find you or did you find music? What's that journey been like?
So as far as my experience with music, it definitely started when I was a kid. My earliest memory of discovering music and learning to play music was with a guitar my dad had lying around. My dad had a friend who was a musician, and that friend always wanted my dad to learn how to play guitar. So in turn, I think he gifted my dad a guitar, but my dad didn't really have too much interest in it. So I started laying around the house, and then eventually, like, my brother and I picked it up, and we started figuring out chords, started figuring out how to hold the chords down without it hurting my fingers too much after some time. And then as I got a little older, and when I say older, I mean like this was around age 5 or 6 when I started realizing what a guitar was. But when I was like in elementary school, I started getting into punk rock, and it came in at such a good time because it was exactly what I needed when I was younger. It was fast, it was aggressive, it was against the standards of the social norms of what was happening at the time. And it was easy for me to play. It was easy for me to figure out how to play those songs. So I had an advantage with that I was able to throw on the tapes and CDs at the time and figure out how to play chords. So I definitely think that it found me in some way, but at the same time, because it did find me, I definitely didn't let it go once that happened. So when I've been grateful ever since, and ever since I learned how to play guitar decently at some point, after a while, I discovered the songwriting process, and I found that it was a way to be able to express myself. I didn't hang out with too many kids in elementary school for a while because, I was into punk. Not too many kids were into punk rock. And then middle school as well, there was some big wave of punk rock during that time. All these big bands were coming up with singles and everything, and it was exciting. It was exciting for me. Like I said, it came at a good time for me when it was an outlet, it was an escape for me. So learning to songwrite and learning at least what I thought songwriting was at the time was definitely something that I needed at that age. It wasn't like too many other kids that were getting into different music, which is okay, which is super, super cool. It's okay. But as soon as I started discovering the punk bands and how easy it was for me to relate to them and how easy it was becoming for me to be able to play or at least discover the instrument, it was definitely a turning point in my life, in middle school especially. And when I got to high school, I started writing a little bit more of my own music as best I could. Started a band in high school. Well, before that, I played in a couple bands with my brother as well. And then when I got to high school, I did a band on my own with a couple friends in high school, and just get going from there. Never let it go, and happy to be able to still do it today.
Let me ask you this. I mean, you said you're at 5 or 6 and you discovered punk. That's a
Yeah.
really, I mean, it's kind of young to kind of like, suddenly spread some punk rock wings.
Right.
Like who are some of those early punk bands you heard, and why do you feel that you were drawn to that?
Definitely. When I was a kid, it was the Smash record by The Offspring, right off the top of my head. That was definitely one of the records that had a huge impact on me as a kid. Um, and I discovered during the same time I was learning to, I was listening to some radio because it was still like a lot of punk bands getting played on the radio, and it was so good to me. It was so influential because it had all the curse words and everything, all the fast stuff that my parents didn't want me to listen to. So it was super appealing to me in a good way. And again, it was easy for me to play. And but it was also I was listening to Green Day, right? I was listening to Green Day, discovered Rancid, Bad Religion, Stranger Than Fiction album was just a fantastic record. And then I started discovering how, like, I realized later on in life that all the while what it was, I was just drawn to melody. I was never too into the screaming or anything like that, or anything that involved just shouting into the mic as much. Not that there was anything wrong with it, because I do, as I got older, I appreciate that and people who can sing like that. But at the time, at that age, it was just not something that I could do, so it didn't appeal to me as much. So the reason I was drawn to punk rock, it was fast, it was aggressive, and it was tied into skateboarding, which is another thing, which was huge for me because I was definitely into skateboarding as a kid, and it just kept going. It just kept going from there. But I was also at the same time, while I was into punk, I was listening to a lot of rock bands because of my siblings, like bands like Pearl Jam and Soundgarden, Alice in Chains. And so when I was listening to punk rock and I was listening to Pearl Jam, listening to Michael McCready do all these crazy guitar solos, it was just mind blowing at the time. So I was able to find some sort of common ground between the two, where I could play some simple chords and then introduce myself to melody through solos and riffs that were being written in those bands, and trying to discover something that was a little bit more like my sound. I always tell people, you can listen to your favorite artists and things like that, and you can emulate the same style or try to play the same way they do, but because you're not that person, you're never going to play the same way. And in the process is how you discover your own sound. But it doesn't happen overnight. You need to keep going. You need to keep going. And I think with a lot of things, not just with music, the reason sometimes like things don't go as planned for people is because sometimes they just give up too soon. And I understand because life happens, but music was just not an option for me to let go. And I'm happy to still be able to say that today. So I'm grateful for that, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest. If I didn't know better, you've got kind of this kind of northeast kind of sound. I've listened to your stuff. You've got a kind of like got this. It's not a hardcore punk. It's not full on rock. It's an amalgamation of like punk rock soul. It's got like, and I'm a Northeast guy originally, although I live in Texas now. Let's not tell anybody that I'm here. But you know, I'll be honest. I'm a big Springsteen fan. I mean, it's a requirement when you live up in the Northeast,
Right.
and you've got these shades of Springsteen in your music. So, but it's still unique. How did you kind of take that clay and mold it together and decide that's going to be my sound?
So I don't even fully consider us like a punk band. I always just try, when people ask what kind of music we play, I always just identify us as a rock band. Um, and definitely, yeah, like good on you for being a Springsteen fan. I'm a huge Springsteen fan. Uh, I think, what drew me into the blend of the two was the simplicity of the guitar chords, and and the melody that goes with it, but the storytelling that comes with the songwriting. And you know, I have a lot of friends that will they'll leave me in the dust when it comes to guitar playing, and they're phenomenal guitar players. They can solo really good, and even my guy Jerry, who's playing with me now, he's just a monster guitar player, and he's great. And I'm still learning, as I don't think it's ever, you ever stop learning how to, do things, but I'm still learning how to solo. I'm still discovering new things and new techniques on guitar and everything. But my approach to music was always the songwriting process and being able to express myself and tell my story of things. Because when you're growing up, you're learning how to play your favorite songs, or you're playing covers, and we do covers. I love playing covers and all that, but it was never something that was fully fulfilling for me. Like being in a cover band, as much as I enjoy, jamming on other tunes, it was nothing that was completely fulfilling for me. What was most satisfying is being able to tell my side of the story, and more than anything, it was something that was important to me because I felt like it was a place for me to be able to say what I needed to say without having any judgment, which was extremely important to me through all ages of life. And especially now as I got older, I reflect on some of the songs I've written in the past. And I'd like to think that hopefully I've matured a little bit from some of those songs.
Well, I mean, let's hit on that because you've got this sound. I really like it. It's easily digestible, right? Like it's to me, if I can hear a song once and it feels like comfort food, right? That's a good song to me, right? It's not going to take me forever to get into it. I can accept other songs and really get into that catalog. But you not only have that sound, but where are your experiences coming for those lyrics? Are you pulling your lyrical piece from personal experience? Are you an observer of other people? I mean, they're definitely deep and emotional and well thought out lyrics. Where's that piece of it coming
Well, first of all, thank you, Scott, for your kind words on the songwriting. Um, Definitely, personal experience is always a big motive when it comes to songwriting, and quite honestly, sometimes as I am writing a song, many times I start writing, and maybe I think other songwriters will vouch for this as well, but you don't always realize or know what you're writing about right off the bat. Um, Sometimes something's coming out of you, or an idea, or some sort of thought or expression is coming, and you don't realize it right away. You don't realize it right away. But a lot of times, what happens with me, at least with my songwriting process, it's I'll come up with a line or two, and that line or two is not always necessarily in at the beginning of the song. So sometimes I'll have and if you know what, this is not a good way to start it. I'll put it in the bank for a little bit, and then I'll come back to you and say, oh, okay, this is a good way to end the song, or this sounds great, or now I know what direction I'm going for. So definitely experience, the change in the world, definitely as well. How things are not what they used to be, but then again, they're never going to be what they used to be. Or I mean, I don't want to say never, but like things are always changing. So I feel like there's always topics to write about, and while entirely we're not entirely a politically driven band. I think it's important to recognize that there are issues going on in the world, or in your surroundings in the world that you live in, at least, to address. But more than anything, it is personal experience and those around me that I find important to write about, and that's where it's drawn from. A lot of times, that's where it stems from, and most cases, it's just a simple guitar riff and a line or two, and the more you experience, the more you have to write about, whether it be life itself, heartbreak, whatever it is. There's always something to write about. Sometimes, even though there is a lot to write about, doesn't make it any easier. So there is that factor. You always have to jump over that hurdle, right? But again, the more you experience, the more you have to write about.
So it sounds, and correct me if I'm wrong, because it's the creation process is interesting. You've heard the stories of people who like literally, boom, they get an inspiration. 20 minutes later, they have a song.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
They get it all.
Hats out to them. My hats off to them. Kudos to them.
Yeah, it sounds like yours is an evolutionary process. You get a little piece here, a little piece there, and then it becomes very additive for you. Is that a good
Definitely. There have been cases, and again, like I hear about guys writing songs. I go, I sat here and I wrote this in 20 minutes, 20 million sales on the song, and that's incredible. That's incredible. There have been cases where like I'll bash out like a verse or two all in the same sitting. Rarely happens, but it does happen. Um, I have, and one of my friends, Simon, we had this conversation not too long ago. And said, I'm gonna write this other song instead, and he's able to bash songs out, and they're really good songs. They're incredible songs. So I tip my hat to that guy too, to be able to write songs like that. It doesn't always work like that for me. I've have had the experience, but lately, because I think I am not the same person I was when I was younger. And so maybe that could be a good thing. Maybe that could be not such a good thing because I over evaluate things and think, okay, what did I mean by this line? Or that's fine. I'll just leave it be. So maybe I don't revisit some areas as much as I should. And maybe I revisit some areas of the song more than I should. But definitely it is an evolution of things. And a lot of times, one of the analogies I make to songwriting when my friends ask me or I get asked about the songwriting is like picture you having a night out with your friends or your family, and then you get home at whatever time you get home, and you pull your car into the driveway, you got the music blaring, and then you get in there, you go inside, you go to sleep, you wake up to go to work next day, or now you get in your car, you turn that car on, and then boom, that music is blasting from the songs from last night, but like you're not in the same state of mind. You're not the same person you were last night. So that's how I compare songwriting. So I come back to it definitely after some time and realize, okay, what did I mean by this? Does this still work? And you're not always going to feel the same way, but I think the key thing is just to find some sort of common ground at some point where you can easily say, okay, I'm proud of this. I'm happy with it. So
Do you obviously you put a lot of thought and effort, but do you ever struggle? And I know I've talked to artists who do sometimes because there's no such thing as perfection, right? Do you ever reach that like analysis paralysis wall where you're like picking at every little piece of it, but maybe in the back of your mind knows that maybe I should just leave it alone and it'll be better than if I meant to do it? Do you ever
yeah,
have that?
definitely, absolutely. Just today, we're going through a couple pictures to use for our thumbnail for the new video that we have coming out. But it's just the thumbnail. We had about like 12 photos that we're looking at. And so at the end of the day, it's like, you know what? It doesn't really matter so much. I think in the recent years, I would like to say that I've gotten a little bit better at that because there was a time where I would just target and I would point out every little thing. No, this needs to be perfect. This to do this. We need to do it like this. And can I just redo it? Can I do one more take? And I wrote one more take. And for my first record, excuse me, Grease Stains, I was in the studio most times by myself. And as it's common with a lot of musicians, they'll tell you that they're always they're their own worst critic. They're your own worst critic. So when you're in there by yourself, just with the engineer, and the engineer is helpful with this definitely as well. But when you're in there by yourself, being your own worst critic, you're overanalyzing things, and there's nobody there to tell you that's good enough. That is a good take. Leave it be. Nowadays, it's changed a little bit. I've had a band in there. I've had my friends in there. Like we've had our manager there. The people from the label come in on this last record, on this last singles that we have coming up. But it's definitely a little helpful now. But there was a time where I was definitely a perfectionist, and a lot of my friends will vouch for that and say, just leave it alone. You don't need to be too picky about it. And there have been cases uh, where I kind of ruined what we had originally. It's like, oh, I wish I would have just kept it this way. But nowadays, I think I've loosened up a little bit. I'd like to think that I've loosened up a little bit.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. I mean, I'm a struggling musician. I started when I was a kid, and I always struggled with I get self conscious of making a mistake, and I just stop, right, which you can't do. And then as I got older, I realized that was going to be the differentiator between my ability to perform in front of other people or not. But as I got into music and got to know musicians and stuff, I'll never forget. It was I think it was Ben. I'm pretty sure it was Ben Folds, the piano guy, Ben Folds. Nobody remembers the bum note.
No.
They remembered him throwing the piano stool at the piano and getting
Right.
physical, right? Or him jumping up on top of the grand piano. So the things that you think, oh, I hit a wrong note, the audience could care less. And the things that you're like, oh my God, this is a risk if I do this. What are they going to think, right?
Right.
So being able to throw away that, and I think it's an innate thing, being able to just ignore it, to say it doesn't matter in the big grand scheme is a skill in and of itself.
And sometimes it also has the opposite effect. There, on some of the songs we recorded recently, we were demoing songs in our rehearsal studio, and our drummer Johnny, he did a couple of things that we listened back and was like, hey, and I pointed it out to him, and I was telling him like, hey, you know, I really like what you did here. This matched perfect. This aligned perfectly with the song. And he was like, yeah, that was a mistake. He's like, I didn't intend to do that, but we kept it. And he recorded the final take with that, and it sounded amazing. He did such a great job. And super fortunate to be able to play with that guy. He's such a solid guy, and he's super flexible.
I have
and
a
such
friend
a
who
good
calls
dude.
us happy accidents.
What's that?
Yeah, I have a friend who calls us happy accidents.
Yeah.
The happy accident. So, but before we get into the new single and video, I want to ask you, because I think it's important. You've gone from being kind of a self-recording artist to having a band with you, right? Tell our audience about the band, who they are a little bit, why you chose them, and how they support you in your creation.
So to begin with, I want to say that I had no intention of playing as just Rudy Nuno. I always wanted to have a band. I wanted to have a band. We were called this, and this is what we were doing. And I tried, as many musicians will probably vouch for this. They were, you try. It's so difficult to find musicians, other people to play with, that have a similar interest and have a similar drive. And so what ended up happening, I met a guy. I met a guy. His name is Will, and we crossed paths. I think it was online somehow or something. He's like, "Hey, I came across your music I came across your file or something, your profile." And I was like, "Yeah, I'm looking for a drummer." And he's a drummer. He's a drummer who just came in here from France. He was trying to move here, and he was here for a little while. And then I spoke to him, and I sent him a couple of demos. He was like, "Yeah, I like this. Let's do this. Let's do this recording or whatever you want to do." And I was like, "Okay, cool." And then when I tried to get in touch with him again, he had to go back to France for a little while. So I had to research for someone. And then in the meantime, a bass player came in, and I don't know if it just like maybe it took too long to find a drummer or whatnot, but eventually he became a little less available during that time. So again, I said, "Oh, you know what? Forget it. Then I'm just gonna try to do this a different way." And then maybe just about a month or so, like this guy Will came back to town permanently, and he's like, "Hey, I'm back. Are you still looking for somebody to do some music with?" I'm like, "Yeah, let's just move forward." I've played in many bands in the past. I've played in many bands and with different musicians, and I've learned and listened and watched, so to things that have worked and have not worked as successfully. But I just didn't want one of these hurdles to keep me from moving forward. So I said, okay, if you can record these songs, just record these songs on drums for me. Like I can take care of everything else. I'll do the guitar, I'll do the bass, I'll do the harmonica, whatever else. So he laid down the drum tracks. We did it at a studio in Hawthorne or Torrance, so somewhere in the South Bay. And then we did it. It was one of those home studios. A buddy of mine, Sal, he did it in the back in the back of the house that he was at. And we recorded 6 songs. That was the first record, Grease Stains. And in the process, it's always difficult to gather a crew, gather musicians, especially when you don't have any recordings, have any demos. So as soon as I recorded that, it became not easy, but just it became a little bit more flexible to try to recruit people to just join the band, because now you have something to sample. Now you have something to show. Now the train's moving a little bit, so people might want to jump on board a little bit. So that happened, and then a bass player came in for a little while. He played with me for maybe about a year or two, maybe. Well, minus the COVID situation. So the album was recorded in 2018. We released it at 2018. Started playing 2019. Started going out of town a little bit, traveling to play. Then COVID hit. We had to stop and then basically start all over again. So we had to start playing shows from the bottom up, and then the bass player became a little less available. And my friend Will, who recorded the album, had all from the beginning told me, "I'm going to help you out. I'm going to do what I can, but these are my plans. I'm going to get into this, get into that." So along the way, basically, one of my friends linked me to the guy I have now. He said, you know what? You need somebody permanent and you need somebody solid, this and that. I know a guy. I think he's the guy for you. So he put me in contact, who's the guy I have now, Johnny on drums, and I couldn't be any secret weapon.
So his name is Joe. He's from Northern California. He's from San Francisco. So originally I put an ad out looking for a bass player, right? And I got hit up by another guy who was interested in the position as well. So through the course of about a month or so, now I went from having 0 members. So to this course of a month, now there's 2 people interested in the position, but the position was filled already by a previous guy who hit me up before, and his name was Brad. And so I had this dude, Joe, and that was also interested in playing. I just asked him, I was like, hey, do you play anything else? And he's like, well, actually, I do. I play guitar as well. I play bass. He's multi-instrumentalist, such a cool kid, man. His heart is in it. He's such a good guy, and he's super flexible, and I'm super lucky to have him. So he jumped on board, jumping on bass, on guitar, I'm sorry. And then down the line, the bass player position became available, and he showed a little bit of interest in it. And he said, if this is what it takes for us to keep playing, like, I want to play, I'll do the bass. If you have somebody else in mind to then maybe can play second guitar, then, I'm happy to play bass. And as long as we keep going, the train was moving. We didn't want to stop. And he said, I'd love to play bass if you have somebody else in mind, which we already kind of did. There was a guy that'd been filling in on guitar whenever Joe went on vacation for 2 weeks, part of the year. He couldn't do one of the tours. It was for previous planned engagement from about a year ago or so. But we had a friend, Jerry, who I know from a previous band as well. Monster guitar player, though, just a phenomenal musician, and just can play, knows the guitar like inside out. And we already sort of had him in mind. I had asked him a long time ago if he was in, but he was so busy doing all these projects. But we had this guy, Jerry, in mind after Joe joined the band as a bass player, or switched over to bass. But we said, if you can get Jerry to play guitar for us, then I will happily slide over to play bass for you. And okay, let's talk to him. And I wasn't sure how Jerry was going to take it, because I knew he was playing in a couple other projects, and he's like his music of choice is usually some of the heavier stuff. He's a well-rounded musician, but I know he listens to a lot of heavy music, so we were a little bit skeptical. Not if he'd be able, or not if he would be a good fit, because we knew he would. He's a good guy first and foremost. Because there is, apart from being a musician and knowing your instrument and being well-rounded with it, there is the factor of, like, we have a certain standard and a certain ethical standard that we like to have within our band. And because there is something special that happens when we all get into the same room, and we play half the time, but we're so connected, like, the other half of the time. So that was important to me. And if it wasn't working out that way, then it was going to cause issues down the line, and I just didn't want to put the rest of the guys through that. But anyways, we had Joe ready to go on bass, and he said, if you can get Jerry, let's do it. That would be great. He's the missing piece of the puzzle. And Jonathan on the drums as well said the same thing. He's like, man, I would love to have Jerry. If we can get him, that would be it. And so I called Jerry. We went out to dinner. Like, hey, I want to talk to you. And he's like, yeah, let's talk about it. And he's like, we went out to dinner. I told him we have this, that, and the other plan. You're the guy. And he's like, okay, I have XXX shows lined up. Let me do those, and then I'm gonna commit. So that's all we have. We have Jonathan. I'm sorry, Jonathan on drums, Joe on bass, Jerry on guitar.
Now, are all their first names beginning with the letter J?
Yeah.
So is the new name of the group Rudy Nuno and the 3 J's?
And the 3 J's. Yeah. No, and then get this. We, on this last recording, we had another buddy of mine that came and recorded piano and organ, did all the keys, and his name is Johnny as well. So we had a 4th J.
So Rudy Nuno and the 4 J's. Okay.
That's right.
Look, you heard it first here, people. This may be the rebranding of the entire outfit. You never know. So you guys have been recording, and you've got a new single and video coming out. Tell us all about the new song and the video.
I'm sorry, Scott. Can you repeat that? You were cutting off for a second.
Oh yeah. So you've been recording with the 3 and 4 J's, and now you've got this new recording out. Tell us about the new single and the video.
So the new single is a song called Serenity. It's going to be the first of 3 releases coming up within this year, within the next few months probably. Serenity's coming out on June 28th. Yeah, June 28th, which is a little less than 2 weeks from now. Not this Friday, but the next Friday. Well, by the time this video comes out, June 28th is what it is. And we will be in Tempe that day for a gig. So it's going to be fun. We'll be on the road. And Serenity is, I have to say, it's probably my proudest work to date. I'm super excited to share it. It's a song about clashing lifestyles among people, sometimes whether it be relationship, your friends, or sometimes even your family members, don't always want the same things out of life as you want, and that's okay. That's okay as long as there's an understanding. So the song details clashing lifestyles with that. One person wanting one thing and another person wanting a different lifestyle, wanting different things out of life, and then trying to figure it out along the way, and then finding yourself in the process of that. So I'm super excited to share that with everyone. Everyone who's in the band now is on that recording. So that's even something more to be excited about. The video is just like some of the best time we ever had shooting a video as well. Not that we didn't have fun other times, but this was such a great time. And it was shot by Nick Riggs, who's just absolutely pro when it comes to shooting. And he brought his crew in, and it was so much fun. We shot it in a warehouse here in LA. Went to Switzer Falls for a couple shots, and on a Saturday he had me hiking up these like mountains. Thanks a lot, Nick. So it was great, but the final piece of it just came out really, really good. I'm really happy with it. The boys in the band are super excited about it, and I'm so super stoked that this is the first single that we will be releasing with our new label, Fuji Records. So, yeah.
Awesome. And look, not only do you got new music coming out, but you got a little physical fitness in there too. So going out on hiking. Now you mentioned you're going to be in Tempe. Like, if people want to find you performing, let's say in the next few months, besides Tempe at the end of the end of June, beginning of July, what other gigs do you have lined up?
So we're going to be in Tempe at the end of the month on the 28th, and we'll be at the Double Down in Vegas the next day on the 29th. And then we're coming back. You know the Double Down? Yeah.
You're playing the Double Down now. Okay. Have you been to the Double Down before?
I have, and we did play the Double Down once before with this band, which was interesting. It was interesting.
Well, look, as long as everybody gets a shot of ass juice, I think you're in good shape. Yeah. They got a great. It's funny because we interviewed Rob Ruckus a little before Punk Rock Bowling. He used to bartend there, and the last time there I met Trumbo the Clown. It's a great bar. If you've never been in Las Vegas to the Double Down, you're definitely in for a treat. So you're playing the Double Down. Where else?
We are playing the Double Down, and then we'll be back in California in Tarzana on the 26th of July, which is a Friday as well. It's at the Maui Sugar Mill Saloon. And then the next day on the 27th, July 27th, we'll be in Downey. We're doing a local show that's more or less from the area that I'm from, sort of, at the Stardust. It's a long history with the Stardust, but we'll play this local show at the Stardust. And then that's in July. So, and then in the month of August, we're going to try to focus. We're already working on the new record that we're hoping to have out sometime next year. So during August, we're focusing on the new record, and then we're flying to the East Coast in September to be in Philadelphia on the 20th. And I think, New Jersey or New York? I think one of those two are still, they're looking really good, but we're still trying to figure out which is the better location for us to go to. We'll be in New Jersey, New York as well for show. And then we're coming back home. We're going to be in Orange County, actually, in October as well. I don't know if I'm supposed to talk about that yet, but it's okay.
Well, hey, look, if you're gonna be in Philly and New Jersey, I got friends up there. I'll be telling them to go check you out.
Hopefully get my
I'm excited for the
uncle.
new music, and it's great that you guys are going to be getting in the studio and work on a new album. Speaking of
Hopefully we
being in
can
the
get
studio, I'm sorry?
Uncle Bruce to come to the show in New Jersey or something.
There you go. Let me see if I can get my Uncle Bruce to do it. That and have him remember me in the will. So speaking of getting in the studio, I always like to ask this question. If you had a chance to get into a studio with an artist, you get to pick one. You get to pick one, even if there's a list. I'm not a bucket list kind of person. I'm like just that one artist that if you knew that if you had a chance to get in a studio, create with them, who would that be, and what would that mean for you?
One artist to get in the studio with. Well,
One
I've
person to be
already
creative with.
I've already mentioned Bruce Springsteen. So, you know what? Actually, I do have somebody in mind. Somebody I would love to work with, and I would love to be in the studio with. You have your A-listers like Bob Rock and Rick Rubin and all that. But I think a good combination between an artist, a musician, and a songwriter, and a producer. I'm going to go with Butch Walker.
I've never who. Okay, Butch Walker.
Yeah.
So that doesn't ring a bell to me, surprisingly. What brand is he in?
Butch Walker. Well, he does a solo thing. He plays as Butch Walker, and actually they still have a couple shows coming in, the Marvelous Three. But he's produced a lot of like the really big A-list bands. He's worked with Brian Fallon of the Gaslight Anthem. He's worked with Green Day, a lot of those top A-listers, and I really enjoy his music. I went to see him a couple years ago here in LA. His performance was just phenomenal, and he's just seems like a genuine dude. So Butch, if you see this, I'd love to get in the studio with you someday. But there's so many people as well, so many other artists as well, and one that I think that I might be able to get into the studio with in the next coming months, but I don't know if they will.
Well, let's see if
wants me to share it yet.
let's see if Butch sees this and perhaps we can make that come true.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you.
Now, here's one thing as we kind of get to the tail end of our conversation here. I got two things left. Music is a gift. Now, everybody should be out there purchasing Rudy's music. Go to a site you can purchase it on, because we have to support artists. We can't be selfish. We just can't take and not give. So you should go out and buy Rudy's music and be listening to Rudy's music. But Rudy, who are two or three artists that you are they're kind of your earworms. They're high in your playlist right now. You're really enjoying them. Who are some of them, and what are you getting out of them? What is that meaning to you from an enjoyment standpoint that you think other people may enjoy hearing?
Definitely, most recently, Zach Bryan. Zach Bryan's definitely somebody. Songwriting he's a phenomenal songwriter. Somebody that I've discovered in the recent year or two, and I just haven't stopped listening to him ever since. I think it was at the gym or something when he came on. And I was like, what is this? And I just kept going. And actually, what led me, I think, one radio station to the other on the Spotify playlist or whatnot was from Tyler Childers. So Tyler Childers to Zach Bryan, some of the guys that I've been really listening to. And then, which Zach Bryan being on the newer scope of artists recently was a big one. So that's definitely another band that, I'm going to pick a local band now. One of the bands that I discovered about a year ago and I've become really good friends with and have done a lot for us as well. The Jackknives. The Jackknives is such a great band and great people. And I'm really, really, happy to be in that circle with them. So definitely a band to check out. And they work so hard. And, we work collaboratively hard together to make sure we do what's best for both of us. But yeah, it's a band that's on constant rotation, most definitely. And then, of course, actually, the Gaslight Anthem having come back in the recent years or so is exciting as well. So I've been listening to them a lot recently as well.
Cool, cool. I've heard the Jackknives. Hopefully, we can get them here on Almost Famous Magazine at some point because I really want to dive into what they're doing because I agree with you. They're really good and they've got they got some of the secret sauce.
Yeah.
This is going to be an interesting question, and I think it's going to lead us somewhere fascinating. But because I've been listening to your music and I understand where the lyrics are coming from now, right? And kind of your creative process. We're now in a world where people are embracing technology, specifically AI. Some people are embracing it to create music and art. Some people are resisting it because they think it's going to be the takeover of the world. Have you started to play with it a little bit in any aspect of your creativity? And where do you think it would land in your creative spectrum?
I do not. I have any experience with AI as far as like songwriting or anything with the music. I think it's important to recognize the changes that are occurring with technology and how they have affected music directly, especially as you were mentioning, buying music. It's so difficult for bands and artists to sell music because everything's available to stream, right? And to some extent, I think we're all probably guilty of that. I stream some music as well, but I do make every effort to support bands by whether it's buying the vinyls, I still buy CDs. I still buy CDs. I find the tapes, I better pick up the tapes. But I have, to answer your question, I have not experimented with AI. And this, I don't know if this is the best way to describe it, but when I was a kid, I remember thinking because I never took lessons on how to play guitar. I was just sort of self-taught along the way. And naively enough, I got to a point where I was like, no, I don't want to take lessons because on how to figure out, I don't want to really learn scales. As a kid, I was thinking I don't really want to learn scales because I don't want to take away from the creativity of learning how to solo, learning what sounds good. Like if I'm trying to figure out how to solo, if I'm trying to figure out a melody, well, let me hit this note and see how it sounds. And and you hit the note and it sounds great, and it's like, okay, cool. But if it sounds bad, all right, well, now you know. But that was if I go back, I would definitely learn the scales. Would definitely learn the correct way of doing, the leads and all that stuff, which I guess, like as I mentioned earlier, I'm still learning. So to tie that into the AI stuff, at the moment right now, I'm thinking like, I don't know if I want to get too much into the mix of that because I do enjoy personally some of the rawness. And I think people are able to connect with that. And there is an audience for people there is an audience for authenticity in songwriting, in lyrics, in music. And that's not to take away from that the technology hasn't done good things for music because it absolutely has. I don't want to take that away from the technology aspect of things, but I have not fiddled with AI because I just don't think I'm quite ready. I'm quite ready to get to that level. I still write my lyrics on a piece of paper because it's just something that's worked for me and it continues to work for me. There's a saying, if it's not broke, don't fix it. So I'm at that point right now. It's not to say that I wouldn't in the future, but right now I think everybody in the band is happy and it's a really exciting time for us because we are doing things and moving forward. We're doing things that we haven't really done before as a band collectively. Like we're going out of town to play gigs and we're going on the East Coast. We have these huge plans for next year as well, include that recorded a new record. And again, if it's working for us, then while we're still willing to grow and learn, if this is working for us and we're all happy, then there's no reason to change the itinerary.
Don't break it, Rudy.
Exactly.
You're on it. You're on a really good trajectory, and you're right. I mean, when I listen to your music, it feels rawly, if that's a word, rawly authentic. It's and I don't think you would get that if you got that from technology. It's very human. It's a very human side. I think that there'll be a lot of places where the technology and AI are gonna help some people, right, but it could also hurt them as well. So I think you've got a good beat on it. And right now, you're right. If what you're doing is working, don't stop. Just keep doing that. So
I think one of the important things to note on that as well is that it's not that we've made it a firm no to say, or we've made it a point to say no, we're not going to do this specifically, or that we've rejected it. It's just that we're at a point where what we're doing has worked for us and we're happy with it. And maybe somewhere down the line something might come on, we're like, well, this might be pretty cool. Like the two guys, Joe and Jerry, the bass player, and especially Jerry right now, he's fiddling a lot with, the direct, because he doesn't always bring an app to rehearsal. He has a direct, like piece of technology where he just plugs everything into it and he gets the tones on it. And I'm like, man, that's so cool. That's so cool. Like the fact that you don't have to carry an app. He still has his app because it looks cool on stage and all that. But the fact that he's like, able to do that with with tech and all that stuff, and he has it all dialed in, I think is super gnarly, and it would be something that would be of interest. But I just haven't been properly introduced to AI, and I don't feel that I'm missing something at this moment that will benefit me at this time. So yeah.
No, absolutely. Look, it's a learning curve. I mean, I use AI to write things and fiddle with ideas, but it is never the final result. So I think that's a great perspective that you have on that.
Good. That's great. And I'm not opposed to people like using it for that purpose as well.
Yeah, no, I think every tool has a use. You got to figure out how to best use that tool to get to where your destination is, right?
Absolutely.
What are you
if
trying to achieve?
Sure. If it works for you, sure.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah.
Cool. So, hey, everybody, I'm so excited we got a chance to talk to Rudy Nuno. We've covered a lot of ground. He's self-taught, right? He's got a new song coming out. He put together a band where everyone's first name begins with a J. So, this may exclusively be the place where we've created a new name for the band, or at least it's going to take up space in the back of Rudy's head. We've accomplished one of the other, and we've had a great time doing it. So, Rudy, I want to thank you for joining me to hang for a little while. I wish you all the luck on the road. Sorry I can't make it to your gig at the Double Down, but I will be telling a friend of mine who lives down the street that he's got to go check you out and tell me about it. And in the meantime, all the best to you with the new song on the road, and we'll cross paths again for sure.
Thank you so much, Scott. Thank you for having me. I had a great time, and thank you for taking the time to speak with me. I'm super excited to be able to share all this new music with everyone. I'm glad I was able to tell you about it, and I hope we see each other soon, brother. Thank you.
You got it. I'm stoked. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.